All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the SIG Docs weekly meeting. Today is October 29th, and we are meeting at the 10:30 Pacific time. So to kick this off, is there any new contributors joining us today?
Hi, Michael Brozizon. I've spoken with this group quite a while ago regarding what I think has been added to the agenda, but we haven't actually contributed in the past, so I guess that would make us still new contributors. And that's myself, Jamie Coleman, and I think I just saw YK Chang join.
Hi.
Hello.
Awesome. Welcome. If someone wouldn't mind taking some of these notes, I was trying to type and take the notes at the same time, and I think I screwed up some of the formatting there, so I'd appreciate it if some of you are willing to modify that.
I will jump on that, Jim.
Awesome. Thanks, Zach. And welcome everybody. Glad to see some new faces here. I'm Jim Angel. Nice to meet you. And so moving on, our this week's PR wrangler is Brad Topol, stepping in for Andrew Chen, who is absent. Thank you, Brad, for taking on that responsibility. I know you're pulling a double duty, so much appreciated.
Yeah.
What's that?
Double nighter. What do they call that when somebody does like a double shift? No problem. Give me some coffee.
Yeah, definitely appreciate that.
Sure.
And then next week we have Barney as a PR wrangler. And I think it was next week that may be double booked. I'll have to double check into that, but I believe there was 2 folks booked on there, and it just might be a matter of doing twice as much effort there.
Sorry about that. Any error there is mine.
No problem. And then also in the agenda, it just says if you're an approver, make sure you know when your scheduled PR wrangler shifts are and know when it's going to be your turn. So moving on to our main agenda. So I kind of threw out some things from last week that I heard about from the Asia Pacific meeting, and just wanted to get a quick status update on some of them for this this meeting as well. So I know last week, Zach, you talked about Doxy. Do you want to give a quick refresher over that? I see there's no updates, but just a quick sync.
Sure. So right now, well, we migrated the static site generator from Jekyll to Hugo in 2018, almost 2 years ago, which blows my mind. But we didn't really update the site's UI during that time. So right now our site UI is the finest that 2012 has to offer. And it would be nice to change that. And that's the goal. So Google released a Hugo template called Doxy that they've made available for open source projects. So I work for the CNCF. So the CNCF has allotted some budget for us to work with some contractors to apply that Doxy template to our site. I'm working with a group of contractors right now to see in what interesting ways applying Doxy to the site will break, and whether that's worth undertaking. So the contractors are putting together an estimate. I'm asking them to, instead of just doing the entire website wholesale, I've asked them to work on the docs section specifically first. From there, we can work on applying the template to the blog, to case studies, partners, things like that. But starting there, and once I have the revised estimate, I'll ask them to start doing the work, and hopefully we'll have some test sites that we can use for group testing. And the goal on all of this is I would really love to have this done before Christmas and have it all done by the end of the year. And if we can align it nicely, it might be possible to have sites available in testing to find and fix bugs for the contributor day at KubeCon North America.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah, that'd be great to do a little sprint on this if we get some progress for North America. But I just saw the reminder saying it was 20 days away. I think it was yesterday or the day before. It kind of scared me. I still think KubeCon is ways away, but I think it's going to come quicker than we all know. So moving on, Brad, last week you talked about potentially a Java microservices tutorial on Katacoda. Is that something that you'd be willing to present today, or I don't want to catch you?
Yep.
Surprise.
No, no. This is supposed to be on the agenda. Mikal is here, whose team has been working on this. And just to give everybody a lot of background, way back when, many months ago, we sort of brought up the notion of, wouldn't it be great if we had content to help a lot of those J2EE and Java programmers who are trying to embrace cloud native, move to things like Kubernetes, but not sure how to do it. And so Mikal and his team are experts at this, and they said, well, we could put a tutorial together on how you could do Java microprofile based microservices. And he actually and his team came here many moons ago. And of course, the thought process was, oh, well, you should make it look like all the other tutorials. Why don't you go build on Katacoda? And then they went quiet for a while and popped up and said, hey, let me show you what we did with Katacoda. So with that intro, Mikal, let me hand off to you, my friend.
Sure. So I have two things to show. Can you guys see my screen?
Yep.
Okay. I have two things to show. First one is the actual Katacoda tutorial. The second one is the landing page, how all the other tutorials have a landing page from which the users get some background knowledge and jump into the actual tutorial from. Unless you guys feel otherwise, I'll actually start with the tutorial, as I do think it's important that the tutorial can stand by itself and that the user doesn't need the prior knowledge from that landing page. But if you guys would like me to start with the landing page, I'm happy to do that as well.
No, definitely show the tutorial. I think that'll be the way.
So I've done the first step because it's just setup process, very similar to the other Katacoda tutorials already on Kubernetes.io. So it sets up the environment for the user, deploys two Java microservices, pretty much, a system and an inventory microservice. The system service just returns information about the system it's running on, and the inventory service just stores that information. Very simple, but it does show two microservices and two pods communicating to each other. So we do, well, just to make sure these are up, and they are. So we can grab the IP and, okay, so we make two invocations via curl. Note that we are passing in the user and password as part of the command. First one to the system properties, and then the second one to the system service, just to show that these two services are up and what they're returning. And then here is the last call to the system properties service, and it shows that the X app name is returning system. So this is kind of the start of the microservice as is, what you have, and then the rest of the tutorial builds on it. So step 3, this is where it goes through and actually modifies the Java code. So we ask the user to add the CDI request to inject via CDI the app name that we saw in the previous step so that it will be configurable. So if we copy that, we can paste it in. And it explains things. I'm going a little quick just because I know I have limited time here. We do need to add a little snippet here to actually tell the user that this will then be injected via Kubernetes config maps, which we omitted here. So that is something that we'll need to update an extra sentence to let the user know why it is that they're actually doing this. The next step does something very similar, but instead of the a random property. In this case, it is that user and password that we saw previously, which is hard-coded currently right here. And instead, we are going to, again, use microprofile config to inject those properties, this time from Kubernetes secrets. So next, we go over actual config map and Kubernetes secrets. So we set up a config map for that system app name property to change it to my system, and or not change it, but to set it to my system. And then we set up a secret, and we specify the username Bob and password Bob PWD that was previously hard-coded in the actual code to instead now be set in the secret. And we explain, kind of give a little bit of a background about what config maps are, what secrets are, and why use which one when. And then we update the YAML file to now actually retrieve the config map and secrets, or the properties that we set in the previous steps, so that microprofile config can then pick them up in the Java code and use them and leverage them. So we've updated it, and as we can see, we have app name coming from the config map that we set, and we're retrieving the key name, and then similarly, same thing for secret, for password and username. So this last step is not that important. So similar to the first step, this one just now is going to redeploy the code with the changes that the user made, and now when they'll go and call the same URL as before, they'll see that the XApp name has changed from system to my system as per what they configured in the config map. And then in the second request to the system service, they will no longer have to provide the username and password, and it will instead be pulled out of the Kubernetes secret via microprofile config. So that's the entirety of the demo. Again, I kind of went through it very quickly, hopefully not too quickly. And it should provide the user a full journey from end to end of how do I go about leveraging Kubernetes config maps and secrets in my Java applications, or in this case, Java microservices, which is
right.
what they're likely to be using.
And I don't know if people know this or not, but the microprofile, the microservices is sort of the best practices from the Eclipse Foundation, right? On how to build those Java services, Java microservices, right, Mikhail?
Yes, and I'm sorry, I should have started with that, and I mean, we do describe that in the landing page. So just as an FYI, microprofile is a community-driven, vendor-neutral, open standard for architecting cloud-native Java microservices. Right. Lots of support from lots of companies that are in this space. As you can, if this, let me see. I don't know why my here.
Yeah, that's okay.
So
and again, yeah, go ahead.
This is just the homepage of microprofile. As you can see, many different companies support the standard. Think of it as the Java EE spec, which is now the Jakarta EE spec, since Eclipse has taken it over, but with a hyper focus on microservices and cloud native and rapid iterative development.
And again, the goal here is to try and increase the ecosystem of Kubernetes by providing tutorials that will hopefully accelerate getting a large number of Java and J2EE programmers that are out there able to bridge from their world to then understanding the microservices to then seeing how it all runs end to end on Kubernetes. So, Jim and Zach, that was really the goal of the work. And then obviously, we wanted to deliver the tutorial exactly like all the other tutorials. So built on Katacoda, nice, easy steps per stage. And would love to have feedback because, I think, we gave the team an ambitious goal of being able to go after that ecosystem, the Java programming ecosystem, and help bring them into our cloud native world. And I think they did a pretty good job. I was really impressed. We kind of sent them off, and Ben obviously was great and gave them some tips and a lot of help, right, McCall? So we got good tips from Ben on how to do things. So huge thanks to him as well. But we'd love feedback and talk about next steps.
Yep, absolutely. That's what we want to hear is kind of, did we get this about right? What you guys would be wanting to see? Do we miss the mark? Improvements, feedback? And I don't know if you guys want to provide that now regarding the tutorial, or if you want to kind of see the layout of this landing page first, just let me know.
Just curious, is this something that could be linked in our agenda, whether it's this document you're looking at here or that Katacoda example you just walked through?
Sure. Do you want me to paste it right now in?
So this is already publicly available, correct?
Correct.
Yeah. So absolutely, yeah. Just link it in, or if you want to.
So I don't have, unfortunately, access to the actual agenda.
That's okay. I have it up. If you want to Slack it to me, and I'll pop it in there for you.
Perfect. Thank you.
No problem.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks for sharing. Is there anyone else have any feedback?
Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah. It might be helpful if someone's coming from the J2EE world and isn't that familiar with the Kubernetes world, maybe to show them how to see the Kubernetes dashboard. Maybe instead of doing a curl, dropping it in the URL. I don't know if you have any RESTful API endpoints, but sometimes if you can go to a browser for the non-Java components, it can give a visual to the developers of what's happening on the Kubernetes side.
Right.
Yeah.
So go ahead.
We could try to do that. I think the main concern there is that we're already having Katacoda 3 different unique views being shown. So throwing a 4th one in there to display the browser might be, well, hopefully not overwhelming to the user, but that would be my only concern, is to not provide too many windows to the user. But I do like the idea of providing something more visual than command line. So we can absolutely take a look whether we can integrate that in a way that would be beneficial to the user.
Right. And along those lines, Zach and Jim, the thought is, is this something where we could put it in a certain place where we could start formal reviews where people can start reviewing it? And again, we think it's appropriate to be added as another tutorial to the list of tutorials we have. Obviously this is not vendor specific. This is meant for, getting an open source community to embrace Kubernetes. And we're hoping, that's what came across, right? That we thought that this would hopefully, there's different things we can do with docs, but it was kind of a beachhead to say, well, can we put something together that we think will actually draw us more people to Kubernetes?
Sure.
Well, that was kind of the idea.
So yes, I think. First, McCall, thank you for taking the time to do the demo. I think that was awesome, and thanks to your team for the work. I think this is a great discussion to have. I would love to see something like this in the documentation. I think it's definitely an implementation question. So I guess the way to move forward would be to open a pull request, or like to maybe even not in a pull request necessarily. I'm mentally weighing whether to start with an issue or to start with a pull request. I think an issue would be more for the, like, does this belong? And I think that's pretty straightforward. So I think really the discussion at this point is more about what would this actually look like in the implementation? Where would the code for this Katacoda tutorial live? I mean, obviously we can like structure it similar to how tutorials live and function in the documentation now, but can you say more about where you imagine the tutorial, the code for this tutorial living?
As far as the actual code, yeah, I mean, I think that makes sense. However, wherever the regular tutorials are, I mean, I agree with that. Happy with, you know, whatever I think you guys would want to do. But yeah, that makes sense to me.
The reason I ask is the tutorial content right now is a bit of an open question because we don't actually have the tutorial content. So it would be a question on our side of where do we actually host tutorial code, because this would be the first to which we actually hosted the Katacoda tutorial code.
That's what I was thinking. I have not seen Katacoda on Kubernetes.io in docs. Will this be a first?
Yes, it would be. So yeah, I think the way to go forward is to open a pull request and like assign Ben Hall into it. Just to get his perspective. Yeah. So yeah, when you're looking, if you're looking, sorry, as we're looking at the shared tutorial, all of this Katacoda loading, this Katacoda tutorial, none of that lives in Kubernetes website.
Oh, okay. I did not know that.
Yeah. So that's the question. Is where does this live?
So where does this the current ones reside that are on the site? Where's the actual code for them?
I would have to rediscover the issue, okay. But I believe that it still resides in Katacoda's hands.
Okay.
So
would that be the proper way to move forward then?
I'm not sure, and that's the discussion that would need to come up.
Okay.
Regardless of it looks like a high quality tutorial, but it raises a larger question about what do we want our own best practices around tutorial content to look like, and this would be the first time we've discussed it. So I can guarantee lively, but not necessarily like lightning fast consensus on it.
Okay, that's no problem.
Yeah, and the beauty of it is we're flexible, right? If it makes sense one place, I don't think McCall cares. If it makes sense another place, I don't think we care at all, McCall. We just want to do what makes sense. And it's, you know, it was kind of that first of a kind to go pioneer and do another tutorial, I guess, different from the other ones. So hopefully these are all good questions. I know they're tough questions and stuff, but hopefully they're the kind of, you know, we always talk about wanting to increase the amount of content in the docs that, you know, will get different areas excited. So hopefully these are all good questions, not like, oh, now what do we do, right?
No, they are good questions. It's timely. And so McCall, I'm trying to offer a lot of transparency about why we seem maybe hesitant as opposed to outright enthusiastic, which I think it's your tutorial deserves enthusiasm. It's really cool. But the mixed reaction you're getting is not from any hesitation about the tutorial per se, and more about oh well, this will be new for us.
Yep.
Yeah, one of the dangers is, I mean, we've all been to these open source projects that look really cool, and you go dive in on the tutorials and the links are broken because that open source project points to a place that used to be awesome and hot and have great tutorials, and then over time it fades away. So not hosting it on Kubernetes.io, might lead to some of those same issues of things getting old if it's just not hosted by Kubernetes.io. That's my thought.
Agreed. That's a very nice summary of, I think, like the 3-issue long thread we've had on this so far. So cool. So I'm all for it. Other thoughts? How do other folks feel about this?
I pretty much echo what you said, Zach. I think the demo is awesome. I think it makes a lot of sense. I think the ownership and the responsibility of who's owning this has yet to be determined, or in a clear fashion, I guess. Speaking for me personally, I'm not a Java developer, so I see it being cool and a way to learn. But at the same time, if something goes sideways on this, I don't really know how to start debugging or helping out or assisting. So I see ownership becoming very important, no matter where it lands in the wider community. So when there is those broken links, or there is the question about the tutorial, there's a clear path of who that question goes to, how it gets responded to. And right now, I feel like a lot of the Katacoda things that we have, since it's hosted through Katacoda, it's kind of like an ER page to the bat signal to Ben Hall to to step in and help out. So I think defining some of that support is going to be definitely important in this. But I do agree that the demo is pretty awesome, and I'd like to see more from it.
And I will say, speaking about more, we actually do have another, at least one that we are actively working on. We just kind of wanted to go one at a time, present this, get feedback, see how it went, get it on the site, and then it'll be that much easier for us to make sure we don't we do all the right things for the second one. And the second one is using microprofile health to do readiness and liveness configuration with Kubernetes. And that was actually supposed to be our original tutorial that we were going to bring forward, but at that point in time, the microprofile spec did not align with Kubernetes liveness and readiness. It does now, since they updated it. So that will be hopefully the second one that we'll bring forward to you guys.
Right. So we probably want to have discussions with Ben and get his input, right, and see what he thinks is best. I mean, I have no idea what he'll say. If he'll say, oh, this should just be with all the other ones, everyone cool with that? Or maybe he'll say something different. I have no idea. But Zach and Jim, are you thinking we should just bring him in and try and get his advice on what to do? Or
yes, I would like him to weigh in. That I also want to surface that conversation publicly.
Yep.
And make sure that that's visible, because I know we have a lot of stakeholders around tutorial content.
cool.
And
agreed.
it's, that's not something that's not just a 7-person Slack conversation. I want that to be a conversation that's visible project wide.
No, absolutely. I didn't mean to imply that it was a private conversation. No, definitely public, and definitely with all the stakeholders out there. So, I just want to thank McCall and his team. They worked a long time on this, and I think it puts us in a neat place of having, some tough but kind of cool questions to go answer, right? It shows the vitality of Kube Docs. I don't know if people saw it, documentation got a really big thumbs up at the European Open Source Summit, with the Google keynote speaker talking about how the best projects that really do well in open source are the ones that have the best docs. So we should all feel pretty proud about that. It's kind of a good day all around.
Awesome. Cheers. McCall, Jamie, and YK Cheng, and Brad, thank you so much. I appreciate your time, and I appreciate the demo.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Cheers.
Thanks. Yeah, awesome work. And I think I guess I should ask, is there any other questions, comments on that before moving on? Okay, here nothing. I see there's a note here about the new localizations. I believe, Zach, you might have added that if you want to pick that one up.
Sure. I just wanted to surface visibility that we have 3 localizations that are either new or in progress. We had a Vietnamese team pass the hurdle to get their initial content localized, add the language labels, get started with teams and members. So they've passed all the hurdles and they're now actively working. So we have another localization active now in Vietnamese, and I think we're getting very close with Russian. I need to double check that their K.org PRs and K community PRs are in order. But I think I recall seeing their Russian label PR in K8s Infra go through. So we are very close with a Russian content PR as well. I also wanted to surface visibility that there seems to be like an initial push for Arabic. I haven't seen like any of the work in any of the repositories go through, but there is now an official channel on Slack for that team to coordinate. So it looks like Arabic content maybe at the very start of the pipeline. So just wanted to raise visibility that we've got more localizations coming.
Awesome, thanks, Zach. Do you know offhand what that brings our total count for localization up to? I know we're getting up there.
Oh, geez, yeah, we are. I think this puts us close to 12 or 13.
Oh, that's pretty impressive.
Yeah, we started the year with 3, so to add that many more in the past, just the past 10 months and change, almost 11 months, is kind of mind blowing.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, cheers.
So moving on to the process section of the agenda. This is just kind of carryover from some of the discussions in Slack and from the last meeting, is finalizing the quarterly meeting date. So the proposed date was Thursday, November 14th, 5 to 9 Pacific. I know there's some feedback. I mean, it's going to be hard to find time for everyone to meet where it makes sense for everybody. I don't know how we come to consensus on this, if we want to propose another date or if we just want to move forward with this date as intended and hope for the best. Kind of an open question, I guess.
So I can provide a little bit of context if that's helpful. Yes, Jim? No? Okay. So we're overdue for our quarterly meeting. The last one that we had was in the spring, and that's my fault for not driving the process forward over the summer. But summer being what it is, I think our attendance would have been pretty low anyway. So we've got to do this, and because we have a global team, we have people on every continent in the Northern Hemisphere. There's never a time where everyone can attend. It's always going to be a raw deal for somebody. So 5 to 9 Pacific makes it at least theoretically possible, if not always pleasant, for East Coast folks to attend. It opens a nice window for folks from the Asia Pacific region to attend. As someone who lives on the West Coast, it's not my favorite time to hold a meeting either, but what do we do? So we've met on Thursday evenings in the past. This time slot seems to work well. I don't want to wait any longer than November 14th. So if the 14th doesn't work, the option is really to go earlier, because after that is KubeCon North America, followed by US Thanksgiving, and then we're into December and there's no point. So is anybody like violently opposed? I don't expect a lot of people are like, yeah, let's meet on the 14th of November. Like, enthusiastic agreement is not my goal. But is there anybody who's like violently opposed, or who's just like, no, we absolutely should not meet on the November 14th, and here's the reason why? Is there anybody who like has a really strong objection to that particular date? All right, lukewarm ambivalence it is. Let's meet on Thursday the 14th from 5 to 9 Pacific.
Fantastic.
Adjourned. Nice.
Well, let's call that, instead of lukewarm approval, let's call that lazy consensus.
I like lukewarm approval. Awesome.
Points for accuracy.
Cool. Yeah, thanks for that. Thanks for the context on the discussion too, and look forward to the meeting. So the next on the agenda is the third-party KEP that we had created. So this is the KEP that Tim Bannister, SF Tim, helped create alongside a lot of us here from SIG Docs about, what third-party content goes into the Kubernetes documentation, what doesn't, and kind of the policy driven behind that. It's not necessarily, I guess I should clarify, a KEP is a Kubernetes enhancement proposal if you haven't heard the term. And it's really how features come into Kubernetes. In this case, it's more about a major change that impacts multiple stakeholders in this case. So that's why we're going with the KEP process. And so I've linked it in the agenda here. And there has been some valuable feedback, and I've seen that Tim's made some edits, and when we've kind of gotten to this point where I feel, and someone please correct me if they feel differently, where now we're just treading water. We had a lot of effort to get this issue surfaced. We brought it up to the steering committee. Thanks to Zach for leading those efforts, and we've now opened up this KEP. Now, I guess, what do we need to do to drive that forward? And then that's also more of an open question.
So I think that's a really accurate description, Jim, that this KEP is treading water. So I think the inertia that we're specifically fighting against is that this is a really easy KEP to bike shed. And it's a really easy KEP for folks to have like strong opinions against, but not for. So like, it's really easy to say, well, here's the thing that we'd like to do. Here's our specific proposal with details about how to vet, accept, or decline third-party content. And it's very easy to go, well, what about, and have it sort of die a death of 1,000 cuts from whataboutism. So I think what this needs is like a clear path to action. And
what about having a framework to identify what is considered a valid third-party content? Some kind of a decision-making framework?
Sure, that would be helpful. But I'm sorry, can I finish my thought before we do feedback? I'm sorry, just launched into it. I'm trying to think about this out loud. It's a great question, but I'm sorry, please let me get through my thought. Like a path for lazy consensus, because I think there are a lot of people who are happy to have opinions, but not a lot of people who are happy to have actions around this KEP. And so sort of carving a nice lazy path for this KEP to follow, I think would be a good way forward. I think we need to provide a clear set of deadlines by which to input feedback. I don't know. I just see this thing getting mired down in sort of bike sheddy opinions about why a particular proposal is problematic in increasingly granular degrees, and that's not going to get us to where we can accurately, reliably tell vendors no, and accurately, reliably tell feature developers what criteria they need to meet in order to include third-party content. Yeah, just providing a really clear, lazy path forward, and providing clear expectations about how to bound feedback by time, if nothing else. Sorry, thank you for letting me talk that out. So Mars, I'm sorry, I interrupted you. What were you saying?
Oh yeah, I was just saying maybe if there was time spent on designing a framework for vetting third-party content, and a lot of the effort went into the methodology for how something is approved by a third-party content provider, that would yield dividends, because it could it would the way that things are vetted could make decisions for the group, as opposed to it being like a snowflake process of evaluating every. I think you said bike shedding. That's a perfect example of how if there's no methodology, everybody jumps in with wanting to put their mark on something, right?
Yeah. So Jim, you asked what does this KEP need in order to go forward. I think I just need to get actively involved with it and provide a lazy path for consensus. Provide, I think that's an excellent recommendation. Provide a framework, specific proposal for. I'm sorry. Provide a specific framework for how these decisions get made, and then drive feedback forward, and just keep iterating on this back and forth between the KEP and getting feedback from SIG Docs going forward. Brad, you look like you want to say something.
Yeah, I have to apologize because I was doing wrangling. I did not read the latest version. For the getting started section, are we putting a stake in the ground? That was the one section I thought you'll get tremendous pushback on if you try and pull out the content that shows how the different distros say to get started. Did we pull that out of this? Because I think having that in there, I think you're going to hit so much headwind, it's going to be a problem.
Sure.
I think that the stronger arguments where the pages where there's some weird third-party content that just seems really out of place. So I don't know if you want to make a statement like, well, there are certain safe spaces in the document that third-party content is appropriate if it follows certain guidelines, and then there are certain places where it really doesn't seem appropriate as far as we can tell. I just wasn't sure, Jim, what stake you made in the ground regarding the third-party content for getting started.
Yeah, so I think on the last time that I looked at the KEP, and I haven't reviewed it in the past couple of days, it seemed like there wasn't really stakes being put in the ground at this point.
Yeah.
There's a lot of examples and proposals of what we're seeing and what we'd like to do to move forward, and I think that might in turn result in some of this treading waters. It is very ripe for opinions right now, I believe.
Right, because we might want to be very crisp, because if you hit somebody who has that impression that they misinterpret this, or they read it and they think, oh, these people are trying to throw out the third-party content. No way, that's never going to happen. You might be able to have a one-line statement that says, hey, we're not trying to change these sections of the docs. So hopefully that keeps a whole bunch of folks at bay and not wanting to rip this apart necessarily. Does that make any sense or no? I think there's certain parts of the docs that they're going to be more sensitive about than others, is my point.
Sure. I think there is. I agree with you. I think that there is definitely a time for that discussion. I don't think we're there yet.
Okay, that's fine.
Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say I will read the KEP soon. I just was a little delayed.
Okay. So yeah, I will take an action item to drive the KEP this week.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not going to lie. This is going to be a hard one to get across the to get through the approval gate.
Did you get any feel, Zach, about whether they would appreciate it in smaller chunks, like smaller KEPs, or did they give you the impression they want this all in one big KEP? Because when it's all in one big KEP, I worry about the bike shedding and all that can occur. If there were certain ways that we had 3 smaller KEPs where we said, hey, I don't know, just thinking out loud, I don't know if that would help or not. I didn't know if you got a feeling from the folks, whether, and you may not.
May actually be helpful.
Okay.
Yeah, the limited round, the feedback I saw from Tim Sinclair, right now, I mean, I pushed for us to have this KEP be the same conversation about third-party content and dual source content. And right now, those discussions are blending in ways that are not helpful or productive. So that may be worthwhile. That may be worth separating out. But I think that's a really good specific question to ask in the KEP itself about how to drive forward. And thankfully, Tim's feedback has given the segue for that question to be timely and appropriate. So,
Okay.
Awesome. Any other comments on the KEP? Hearing nothing, that is the end of our agenda. Is there anything else that anybody would like to talk about today? Hearing nothing, I'll give the official countdown. All right, that's a SIG Docs meeting. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
thanks, Jim.
Thanks.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.